I think conversations around what rich accountabilities might look like, conducted with a community, might be a productive way forward to help change, reform, and to help ameliorate inequalities through schooling. And I'm working on a project on that at the moment. Partnerships with communities, and there's other people, and Peter Freebody tomorrow will talk about a resource which the program's developing for teachers and schools to research with and collaborate with their communities. And this is beyond a deficit view. It's a funds of knowledge, recognising there are assets for learning and that those assets should be used to scaffold into pedagogies and so on. And we know that the amount of community infrastructure for learning is another mediating variable in disadvantaged communities. And I hope there's a lot of research that we're going to see coming from the Australian Education Development Index to see how we might intervene to achieve more equitable futures. If we look at school leadership, I think the emphasis on leading learning, yes, absolutely. This is teacher learning, student learning, community learning, pedagogical learners, pedagogical leaders, principals. But more than this, I think there's the need to build social capital and trust relationships inside the school and out in the broader community, and filtering and focusing on what the focus ought to be. And I think schools that are represented here, Richard Tees says they're condemned to innovate. If we look at the time since the Carmel report, we see the relationship between socioeconomic background and school performance has remained quite intransigent. And so he says one way forward is to innovate. And I agree, we don't fall back to the default position. And I think support for an innovations program is very, very important here, because it's putting the student-teacher relationship at the core of everything that happens in schools serving low SES communities. Teachers' central role, and I think the quality teaching framework in New South Wales does that, and it's there in the priority schools programs. What we found in our Queensland research, and I went into 1,000 classrooms and observed 1,000 teachers, and the one thing that concerned me was that there was a trade-off at times between care and intellectual demand, that it seemed as if you cared, you didn't make the demand. And I think it's the weaving of those two together, because the most caring teacher and school leader is the one who is pressing and pushing, but supporting young people to make cognitive gains of various sorts. And I think McDonald and Shirley have some really interesting things to say in that idea of the mindful teacher. I like their notions of innovative overload and repetitive change syndrome. But I also like the notion of authentic alignment, that you align what you're doing with those broader purposes of schooling.